welcome to the October meeting of the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission, C2E2. This is an open public meeting. It will be recorded. People are welcome to make public comment at the beginning, but after that, only members of the commission can speak. And we'll go around with a short group of introductions. But Trevor, before we do, we have to say that our speaker on Green Banks is not coming. Thank you for making the extra effort to be here, but hopefully we'll have other fun stuff to talk about. Anyway, thanks, guy. So let's go around. So I do want, before we go around with introductions, I do want to mention that, as I just said, our speaker unfortunately had a family thing come up and was unable to be here. But luckily we have two other speakers who will be starting first. I did want to point out that we had public comment, and it's the same group who commented last month on the low residential study and lot coverage that Lisa cannot report on because the meeting is later this week, so nothing has happened since last week, maybe in November. So they had sent some links to content that went around with the agenda, and then today they sent around this PowerPoint. Maybe there is somebody. Anyway, so let's go around the table and then we'll go around the, so you have the slides to look at your leisure, and we will probably be talking about this in November. Let's go around with introductions and we'll start with you, Jenna.
Okay, Jenna Peabody, Air Team.
Jason Papakosma, Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management. Henry Perlow, Commissioner.
Elizabeth Whitney, Commissioner. Katie Thompson, Commissioner.
David Friedman, Arlington resident.
Scott Bordeaux, Commissioner. Alex Rowe, Commissioner.
Doug Snowinboss, Commissioner.
Joe Trevette, Commissioner.
Rob Sandoli, Commissioner.
Lisa Marcellus, Commissioner.
Cindy Lewin, Commissioner.
Ollie Shepherd, Air Team.
Great. And do we have Rich? Rich, I see you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Rich Dooley, Director of Climate Policy, Arlington County staff.
And Trevor.
Trevor Montano, Commissioner.
And Shelley DuPont.
Hi, Shelby DuPont, interested citizen and local student.
Great. Well, welcome. All right. Yeah, sorry. I didn't see the B, but I see it now. Okay, so is there anything else? So I know Helen is out, Lily will be late, Jen Fioretti will be coming late or dialing in late, all for various excellent reasons. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jason and Abby. Thank you for being here. Just a little background. Jason, of course, I think everybody knows Jason, but you can introduce yourself.
Yep.
But you're going to be talking about generally what you've been doing since you took over this position.
Yep.
And Allie is part of the continuing group. We've had people from the Air Team, which is sort of the heart of the focus on the issues, our issues in the county. And we've met with everyone, but Allie is the newest and the only one we haven't met with. So Allie is featured.
Okay. We have slide deck. I've got a few things I'm going to talk about up front, and then I'll turn it over to Allie to talk about the e-bike program. But Jen, if you want to jump in. So basic agenda. So my theme is transition. When I was putting this together, there were a lot of things I put on that list, which I'll tee up in a minute when we get to that slide. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Jenna, just to talk about a recap of the debriefs and some things we're working on, and then over to Allie to talk about the in-progress e-bike voucher. So transitions. The slide got longer this morning when I was thinking about some of these things.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So the timeline. So I was appointed as the acting chief last December. So it's hard to believe it's almost
A year.
been around the sun once since that time, and then officially in early April. And right when I started officially, our deputy director, Mike Moon, moved on. And so there's another transition there because, as you probably figured out, exposure to Mike, he knew a lot about energy, very active in a really helpful way, kind of bridging leadership and communication with his knowledge of energy. So that was a big deal. And then even within air, we did a little reorganization there. So Steve Burr, who you know, was promoted to be the manager of the air team. So that wasn't the case before. There wasn't a single manager. And I think that was an important move as well to kind of just have a little more agency and coordination and within the air team itself. And then also Ally came on board March, right? And I'm skipping around a little bit, right? Wasn't your first day when we had the flood?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you were still remote.
I was here for that week.
Oh, that's right, you had to come
So
for-
I had a fun adventure of navigating which room to go to for
Yeah.
orientation.
Yeah. You know, and I think we talked a little bit about it, but that was a really big deal. I know Elizabeth knows from, you know, what Ryan's been working on and everything that happened since then. It was a lot of internal work, mediation, and then, you know, replacing carpets, and then from there we went, preparing for that. So we were sitting basically kind of in a makeshift space in the back of our suite. We started hoteling before it was. But there, you know, I think the team pivoted really well because, you know, we're used to working in a hybrid setting, so you can kind of adjust to it. I think a lot of people know it. You can do it, but it was also really disruptive. Just not knowing where to sit and just cubes and other things. And so I think the team weathered that pretty admirably. And then we had to turn right around and get ready to move to hoteling. We moved to a different floor. I will say there's nothing like a flood to get you to purge things because a lot of things had to just had to go.
Yeah.
So we officially moved. We went from the 7th floor to the 8th floor. We've been doing it for about 5-6 weeks now. So that's kind of, you know, sort of the physical piece of it, transitions. But there was just a lot going on all at once. And then at the same time, we had an election and things, as you know, started happening pretty rapidly in terms of, particularly in the grant space, some of the major grant that we had that was canceled, and trying to figure out how do we close that out. A lot of administrative overhead that went with that and is still kind of lingering a little bit. It was more complicated, I think. We never envisioned we'd have to kind of take it apart.
Yeah.
And we had partners on that grant, George Mason, Virginia clinicians for, forget the full title, but there were 3 or 4 partners as well. Yeah.
What was the context for the cancellation? Was it part of the federal grant?
EPA, government to government.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they sent a letter saying it doesn't align with EPA's priorities, so that was their grounds for.
Because it was called energy health equity. I think the federal OMB, there was a law that came into place that removed equity from all things. So it was like immediately flagged and cut.
Yeah.
Were there, I'm sure you've had council look at this, but were there explicit cancellation provisions in the 4 corners of that contract?
Yeah, I guess the short answer I'll say is that there are some like legal steps in the process that are still not completely finished. I can't say that much, but we're not optimistic that it'll, you know, if and when that comes to an end, that it'll be favorable. But it's being explored at least. Yeah.
I think a lot of people might be in a similar
Yep.
position.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was obviously really disappointing. But beyond disappointing, it's also been, particularly Steve in particular, was bearing the brunt of a lot of the administrative overhead to kind of untangle all that and get it to where it needed to be. But that didn't stop us. That's part of the other theme here is I'm not just putting these things and say, so basically we've just, moved offices and that's all we did. We, at the same time these things were going on, we were regrouping on the Green Building Incentive Program and figuring out, okay, where do we go from here? And so, as you guys know, we've, worked through a different engagement process, a targeted engagement process, and then have our marching orders to bring it all to the board in December. So that's the path we're on there, but that's been a lot of work, but I think good work, important work. And I hope, I think you've expressed some appreciation on the engagement part of it, which we really appreciate.
I think we talked about the round table at our last meeting.
Yeah.
That Jason and Jenna, maybe Ally, but Jason and Jenna put together this round table where we met with other environmental activist groups and developers all in the same room and could really talk about what would get the developers to do the things we want them to do. And they were very clear that we won't do a single thing unless you pay us to do it. That's how our business model works. In the nicest possible way. So that was, I mean, that was really informative, or not a surprise to Scott, but that was something that we've been asking for that you guys made happen. That was really great. And as for the GBIP that you're talking about, saying it'll go to the board, but you're taking it to the planning commission. You want us to talk a little bit about the
Yeah.
timeline?
Yeah,
I'd like to
so,
bring it up.
you know, it's a short runway. We're taxiing, as I've been saying, we're on the taxiing. And before going to the planning commission officially in December, it's important to go to them sort of unofficially, so they understand and have some context before they're in their formal planning commission role. So we're confirming whether we maybe, the current tentative plan is to do it as an informational item a week from now, at their November 3rd. We are meeting with the chair tomorrow to confirm.
The chair of the planning commission or the chair of the county board?
Planning commission. Yeah, and her name escapes me.
Yeah.
Emily Peterson.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. So, so that's pretty near term, of course.
So in other words, your draft will become public when you present it at the planning commission meeting.
I would say that the pretty detailed outline of it, like in that presentation, but the actual draft that'll go with the board report. As we discussed, our goal is to put that out earlier than the official process would have us put it out. So that would be like mid-November. That's our goal.
Right.
To have some time to look at it.
Right. So we should think about that.
Yep.
Okay, back to you.
No, that's good. That's good. So, on that topic, to some extent, I have economy and budget there. I think on the economy side, you know, I think that the conversation with the developers on the green building incentive policy, there's definitely a shift in a lot of things that's happened in a fairly short period of time. And that's top of mind and, you know, kind of putting forth a policy, but we also wanted to have some endurance too. You know, meet the moment, but not, you know, but be optimistic about what comes, hopefully will come in a year or 2, 3 years. But it's certainly not a favorable market right now for development. And that I think was relayed to us in those conversations as well. But I hope it's, you know, a point in time and not an era. It's kind of how I think about it. So program payments, green building incentive policy is one of them. We'll talk a little bit about the residential program just broadly tonight too, but
The low residential study.
oh, sorry, I'll get to that too. The residential energy,
Right.
residential energy program.
Yeah, we want to hear about that.
You know, just the number of things we can talk about with that. The other thing though, I think it's really important is the relationship with the Climate Policy Office and kind of charting our roles and responsibilities with Jen and Rich. And I think we've really hit our stride in figuring that out. One way I look at it, just kind of in a somewhat selfish way, is like this frees me up to focus more on management teams, the whole other program, the stormwater program too, and kind of sharing roles and responsibilities with a lot of the work that Jen and Rich are doing in the policy space and engaging with the county board members and the community. That's a whole other body of work that's really important. And I think it's be really difficult for one person, particularly in the climate and energy space, to try to do both.
People are in OSM altogether, stormwater and air.
30, I think it's 30. Yeah. I don't know if it's 30 with me or 30. But it's
Close
right
enough.
around 30. Yeah. Yeah. So we have the air team, which is 6 people, right? 6.
Yep.
That's right. And then basically the remainder is broken into sort of 2 main buckets of sort of stormwater infrastructure, capacity, flooding, and then sort of the water quality, compliance, grade infrastructure between those 2 groups. And we've got some outreach. Eileen Winquist and myself.
Eileen has spoken to us.
But the CPO, I think that's just an important piece of this because we've been, you know, trying to figure it out. We meet every other week, Rich and Jen and Steve and I, just to kind of compare notes.
Stay parallel.
Yeah,
Keep going the same
coordinate,
direction.
you're working on this. What about that? We've been starting to talk about legislative stuff, right? The county has, I think you guys know, we have a new
Right.
Ryan.
Yeah. I'm meeting.
Brian
with him
Esty.
tomorrow
Brian
morning.
Esty.
so I should know.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah.
So that's, an obvious area of coordination. But, and also, setting up the Eco Action Climate Ambassadors Program, helping to plan that, which apparently we have 30 folks from Arlington.
At least.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, from Arlington alone.
yeah, another 5 or 6.
Andrea is.
Yeah. So helping to kind of sketch up that program and how we can support it and what's their role. So I think it's just, we're really pleased to have that office for sure. And they have a new engagement person, Rena. Yeah. So Jenna was on the interview panel to.
What?
For the newest CPO member, so the staff member, they hired
right.
their communications person.
Oh, they hired their person.
Yes. So we will be sure to get her on the fence. I saw your eyes.
Yeah. Looking at my notes here, a couple other things. So I think, I feel like we've turned the corner on some of the hardest transition stuff. And now looking forward, rebuilding, residential energy program, we'll hear about a little later on, we updated the CPACE ordinance. We can make that a little more functional, is one way to look at it. To get some more updated. And, I just mentioned briefly on the stormwater management side of the house, there have been some big things underway, the low residential study, of course. They're going to be presenting to LRPC, I think Thursday, is that right? Wednesday. Yeah, that's right. Today's Monday. And I can answer a question or two about that as well if you have it. And we've been also working on flood resilient design and construction guidelines. That would be to basically give a toolbox for property owners to how to make their properties more flood resilient. We can't regulate that outside of floodplains. We're talking about the areas that flood outside of FEMA floodplains.
Yeah.
We don't have authority to regulate it, and it would not be easy to regulate, but certainly want to start with getting to a place where people understand their own flood risk and then know what they can help, steps they could take to make their properties more flood resilient. So that's been a big effort. There's going to be a stakeholder engagement phase happening, I think, turn of the year, like January. That's been a big effort as well. And of course, a lot of capital projects. We've got some stream projects underway, outfall projects, and then we're just starting the CIP now. In the next 10-year CIP, we do that every 2 years. So that's kicking off. So it doesn't get to the board till July, but we do budget early and often in Arlington. So we're always talking about the budget of the CIP.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess the last thing I would just say, you turn the corner. I think that what I've been impressed with, and I think you've seen it with the team members, like this is the air team, a very dedicated, committed group.
Yes.
Very passionate about this work, and I think it shows. It's a good problem to have as a manager when it's, sometimes you have to, slow things down or direct it to certain processes as opposed to saying, hey, why don't you get going on this? Because usually there's 2 or 3 steps already been done on a particular effort in a good way, being proactive to kind of do the research, like the EV charging work you heard about Emily last month. She's done a lot of research on that already to kind of hit the ground. So it's really dedicated.
Yes. Great.
Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of a stream of consciousness, but I just wanted to highlight, kind of where we've been and where we're headed. And just some of the things we've been working on the past 9 months or so, the challenges along the way, but it's been a busy move.
So maybe do talk a little bit about the low residential space. This is the second meeting where we've got public comments about it, and people seem to be concerned. I think we're all concerned about the surfaces, and their argument is it's all these big houses that are being built.
Yeah.
The low residential study, I guess, is focusing on patios and other. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
And what they think that should be done differently.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth spending a few minutes on that. I think one of the things that we learned, I think, from our planning partners. So this study is DES is involved, planning is involved, and parks is involved for forestry. And we kind of set it up with this first phase. It's sort of what I'll call sort of the discovery phase, where this is kind of teasing out, I think, these questions and making sure we're understanding, like, what are people not liking about it, or what are they not understanding about the study, or some combination. So one of the things that's emerged is, I think some of the stuff you've seen in the slideshow, and maybe there's some confusion around that. Let me back up. The board basically directed us to study what sorts of caps on total impervious surfaces could exist on residential lots. Like, what should those levels look like? And that would include everything. Anything that's impervious, the building, the driveway, the patio, anything in that space. And so, I think the way we kind of framed it up was, you kind of have, particularly if it's a new house, but let's just say more generically, like an owner would have agency. You can decide how much do you want to allocate to the building versus other impervious surfaces. And so that could change. Some lots might have a larger home footprint, but less other things, or vice versa. But the other thing that's important, I think this might be one of the pieces we're trying to make sure we emphasize, we're not recommending any changes. There are not going to be any changes to the current limits on the main building footprint that already exist. So the zoning ordinance already says, a house can only be so big and not any bigger. And that's not on the table to change. It's just, in addition to whatever that dynamic looks like, there's a total cap. And I think the emphasis is on, it's the amount of impervious that governs the stormwater and tree dynamics more than anything else, not whether the home is 2,500 square foot home, 4,500 square foot home by itself. And I think that some of this might be, and this is why we're in this phase and trying to make sure we refine our messaging and information, and we have another open house where we can get some more clarity, because we got some feedback like this at the first open house, just to make sure we're really clear that it's a total cap that's being looked at for impervious that would cover everything, not just houses or patios, but the whole package. So am I saying that here? Is that clear in this room, or are there still questions about, well, I'm not sure if that makes sense?
I don't know that we've focused, Elizabeth.
I did have a thought, reading over some of these materials and listening to the public comment last time. And this might be out of line, but I think that there is a sentiment that the character of homes in Arlington is changing and has changed over the years. And there's a part of this argument that seems like the environmental issue is a pretext for challenging that. And so I'm encouraged by the way the county is looking at this with respect to the total impervious surfaces and really focusing in on the environmental impact of the amount of lot that is covered by impervious surface, as opposed to getting kind of distracted by the size of the building envelope. And I want us to be clear-eyed about our strong agreement that we need to do more to protect tree canopy and to protect, the landscape from stormwater runoff, et cetera, but that we don't have to accept the premises that are brought to us by some of these outside groups that the footprint of the home itself is more at fault for the loss of tree canopy than it actually is, according to research and data. That's my comment.
That's very well said. Other thoughts?
Maybe just a quick couple of clarifying questions, and apologies, I haven't had a chance to really go through the materials thoroughly just yet, but for
Just got them.
there you go. For these lots, is it for existing impervious surfaces that may be like renovated? Would those be the primary things that we'd be concerned about, or is it like new vacant lots that would be developed? Because I don't know how many of those there might be in Arlington. Probably more than I think, but
The vacant lots. Well, I'll start this way. So this would apply to every lot.
Okay.
Whether it's contemplating doing anything or not,
Mhm.
or at the time whether there's a renovation that happens or a new house gets built, it would apply to any lot as a overall sort of zoning.
Mhm.
So embedded in that is there going to be some body of homes that are in that non-conforming space that
Right.
already exceeded.
Yeah.
So part of the study will look at, well, how do you deal with that? That's in the kind of the future phase when you get to recommendations. To your question about how many vacant lots there are, it's sort of a both and. It's not that many, but it's more than you would think.
Yep. And then maybe just a quick follow on to that, and it might be in here, so apologies if I'm asking something that I could just find if I use my eyeballs. But would there be a potential loophole for those lots that did use, say, maybe exceeded their what would look like an impervious surface, but in fact actually used pervious materials for development? Like would they be able to build bigger than what would be particularly allotted?
Now this sounds like.
Not to give anybody any ideas.
No, this sounds like a planted question, but in a good way, because this is the confusing part, but we've been, trying to be clear on it. So under both the stormwater utility that we have, where we assess a fee based on your impervious surfaces, and under the stormwater ordinance, which, regulates, new construction essentially. Any of these built surfaces are considered impervious, including whether it's pervious paving or something else. But then you get a credit, like on your stormwater utility bill, you get a certain credit for it. And so under this construct, we're applying that same set of sort of definitions and structure that they would be considered impervious. Now, whether or not there's some crediting mechanism for that, it remains to be seen under this particular, because part of the challenge is, whereas under the utility and the stormwater ordinance, there's monitoring and maintenance required, and we get reports and we track it because it has to stay pervious. That's why you got the credit. This would be a little bit different if we went down the path of anybody wanted to put in a pervious patio or something. Who would track that? So it's a great question. I think the short answer is it's a constructed surface. It would count in this context.
Mhm.
Whether or not there be anything else that would come with that as like some allowance because I think part of the challenge is it's still displacing space for trees.
Yeah.
So there's the plantable space part of it too. So I think, it's this fantastic question because we've gotten it. And some people are very concerned that it will be. And we're trying to message that we don't think it will be, and that there's also plantable space to consider.
How does this fit in with the tax on impervious surfaces that's been showing up?
Yeah, the stormwater utility.
Yeah,
Yeah. How does this fit with it?
I mean, did that make a difference? I mean, when you tax something to make people do less of it, has that been around long enough to see if that's having an impact?
I think the short answer is probably not much, because it's typical home pays about $260.
That's not enough.
It's not enough to change behavior, like in a financial sense.
Yeah.
It's a fairer way to pay for it, like to pay for the stormwater program as opposed to like property value. But it's not so much an incentive.
Just to put a face on this, I have 2 houses in my neighborhood, which is a hilly neighborhood. And so they have these hills. So they both terraced them, and they've paved every terrace and put little chairs and tables on every single one. So taking this huge hill that they had, and and then Jason and I talked about the other house in our neighborhood, which is like talk about your loophole, where it was like a 1-room little house, like a real estate office or something. And they somehow, it was really old. By keeping one wall, they were grandfathered into before these zonings. So they've taken that 1-room place, built this big house, but it's like, it's 1 story on the bottom. And then it's, but it goes all the way to every possible edge. There is not a blade of grass that's not covered because it was grandfathered in. So there's a lot of random things.
We have some challenging terrain for yards in Arlington.
Yeah.
Like the first owners of my house put AstroTurf on most of my yard. And
Really?
you would not believe how challenging and expensive it is to
Get rid
remedy
of-
that. Because you can't just pull it up and hope that grass grows.
And is that like
Um,
PFAS? Does that cause it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's
Yeah.
pretty embarrassing. But the quotes that I'll get to fix that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I know other folks that live in Arlington will just say, yeah, the cheapest thing to do was to just put a patio over the entire backyard
Wow.
and to build that impervious structure. And then you're done and you have livable space outside.
Wow.
But, I think it makes sense to me that you are going to have to pick and choose between these paved outdoor spaces and more square footage for your home within the limit that the county can work with.
Right.
Like you can't buy a large house and pave the entire backyard to make a mega patio or I guess a bunch of little terraced patios. Interesting, but I don't know how, AstroTurf fares as
That's an impervious.
impervious surface.
Yes.
Yeah,
Any,
Wow.
anybody has any
Different
ideas
numbers.
for how to fix that?
wow. Well, so this is a preview of what we're talking about more, but it is interesting that it's, if I listen to you say that already the size of the house, it's subject to certain controls, so those controls are not changing.
Right. That's a key message among others, but that's certainly one.
Right. So other questions about Doug?
I have a couple of questions, but, so just real quick, first one's like an org chart question, Jason, and I'm sorry for my ignorance here, but, so there's the air team of 6 people.
Yep.
You know, most of them, they're great. We should support their work for sure. And then I guess you say there's 2 different stormwater teams. And then you're in charge of all 3 of those groups. Is that right? Do I have that?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What's your title?
Bureau chief.
Bureau chief. Yeah, we're technically a bureau, although sometimes it's talked about as a division, but technically it's a bureau. I'm a bureau chief.
Okay.
Opposite. The trouble is, it's called the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management, but it's a bureau.
It's called an office.
So that's a whole other, you don't have time. I can tell.
You
Not
don't have.
enough time and possibly not enough interest.
Exactly right.
Okay, so second question, and this is one that I'm not expecting the answer to tonight. It's just to plant in your head, and maybe if I could follow up with you, maybe in a week or so, we had a chance to think about it, talk to people, whatever. But if the budget were to come out where the air team got either more funds or more FTEs, how would you, what would you have those FTEs do? What projects, or how would you assign them, or what would you do with extra people? Or maybe I know Vicky Veschel does a lot of great work. Maybe you'd rather use the funds and use more contractors. I don't know.
Yep.
But those are just things for you to think about. And if you don't mind, I'll follow up with you like a week or so and think about that. If you want to spitball something right now, fine. But if you want to chew that over, that's fine too.
I will not spitball but what I will say is, I think that the things that we're working on, for example, like the residential, we're going to come up with a better name, right?
Yeah.
Are scalable, with funding, either increase resources or decrease resources. So that's one way I would answer that is, we could do more in certain spaces.
Yeah.
The things we're already planning on doing.
Okay.
Like whether it's more technical assistance, more resources for residents, more touch points with staff or with consultants, whatever it might be, we could scale programs. That's kind of how we've been designing it to be scalable like that. And again, hopefully this is a point in time and an era in terms of our local economy, and that there'll be better times ahead to scale up when that time comes.
I would just observe it. Climate change doesn't care if it's a good budget year or a bad budget year.
Fair.
But thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Well, I know we want to talk about the residential energy program, and also probably circle back to GBIP, but is there anything else we should? So you look like is this?
Yeah, I thought that was a great segue, talking about the other programs, and I can go forward with this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, a lot of what he has mentioned, I'm basically just going to chat about. And if anyone online, we can still see you if you haven't chat, so feel free to chime in. But so just a reminder of why the air staff is presenting. There was, the request by C2E2 earlier in the year after Paul had did a presentation in the previous year, 2024. And so we had then brought, Jason in January when he was the acting chair. Steve, had discussed the grant funding, which was the GGG closeout, which was just, discussed around the EHE, the energy health equity issue, the ECVG, which Allie will be talking about, the e-bike voucher program. And then he also talked about the CFI EV charging grant. Drew had come in April to discuss the GHG inventory update. So just a reminder that Arlington tracks all the greenhouse gases that result from the activities from the county. And he summarized the dashboards from the community greenhouse gas emissions for 2007 through 2023. And we provided that website, so it's still, accessible and updated. I came in May and I provided an update on the outreach, so any tabling that we're doing, county fair, Green Home Gardens tour, the report that we produce annually, which is the Accelerate report, the newsletter, which is monthly, any social media posts, and also like materials at all of these events. And then Emily just came in last month, as you recall. She talked about the EV work plan and all of the research that she's doing for the EV items. And then so Allie will also be, she's chatting this month about the EV voucher program. And she will be wrapping up the AIR staff presentations. So again, just touching on some recent and ongoing projects that Jason was, alluding to, but we in September, the Lover Run Community Solar Community Solar PPA became operational, which was a power purchase agreement. So the county is now focusing on the next wave of PPA agreements. So those will be 4, which will be at Central Library, Equipment Bureau, Quincy 1 and Quincy 3 buildings. All of these facilities have had recent roof replacements to be both more efficient and then also solar ready for the installation of the solar arrays. And these PPA agreements are with Dominion Energy Solutions.
That's great. This just backward. What is Quincy 1 and Quincy 3? Are those?
Where are they?
No, what are they? Are they like current? Are they
I
county?
think that one of them, I can give you like a full description of them on their websites.
Okay, I can go look.
Where are the PPAs?
The power purchase agreements with Dominion.
When will they be
I think
located? Who will be the beneficiaries? Tell me everything.
so. Right now, they're currently under review, and they're going to go to the county board over the next 2 months. But I think that they'd be located in our usual location, which I believe online we're doing somewhere in the PPA.
Oh, sorry,
location.
the PPAs are the solar on roofs that turnkey, Dominion does turnkey, not the utility scale solar.
So the VPPAs.
Yeah, not like the Maplewood, that's still that one's down, there's not another one that we got teed up yet, is that the clarity you're seeking? Yeah, these are the rooftop solar.
Yeah, I'm wondering what buildings they'll be going.
Yeah, that one we got, you mentioned, Equipment Bureau down at the Trade Center was one of them.
Yeah, Central
Library.
I don't remember drawing a blank on Quincy 1, and I will find
I
that
know.
while you're talking. I should know.
Okay.
I mean, you just said it, and I was like, wait a minute, yeah, where is that? But yeah, there's 4 locations, county facilities. I'll find those other 2.
Also solar related is the team has been working with Solar United Neighbors to now reintroduce the co-op program. So we will be going back to the solar co-op. We were presenting the MOU in the November board meeting, and this will continue our collaboration with Sun. And this is specifically around outreach programs such as the mailers, which was not in place last year. With regards to benchmarking compliance, the 2020 GBIP update, through that update, the 2022 standard site plan condition and affordable housing investment fund properties, the county is seeking developers to annually benchmark utility data, and the county is working to boost compliance, expand support and resources, and better leverage the benchmarking data to inform the energy performance and savings opportunities. And then the county has about 45 buildings that currently meet this requirement. I'm going to touch on the CPACE and I'll go through everything else. But first, with the CPACE update, we just had our webinar last week. I'm not sure, did anyone attend the CPACE webinar last week? So
I was there.
it is recorded. It's evergreen on our website. So the county updated its commercial property assessed clean energy program. And so the ordinance was updated to expand across clean energy financing for commercial property owners and developers, and updated state enabling legislation. They updated the user guide, the program guide, and this webinar covers that. Again, the link, I can forward out the link to everybody, but it's on our website as well. And we will continue outreach around that, around the CPACE.
And Jenna, if I could ask a quick question, I mean, how are you conducting that outreach? Because best as I could tell, there weren't very many or any developers or lenders on that call. I mean, there was a number of Arlington County staff and a few of us from C2E2, but it seems like we might be missing a chunk of the folks that we really want to participate in that, be it the developers and the lenders in that space.
Yeah, you, Trevor. I thought someone was on it, so it was definitely Trevor. So with regards to the outreach right now, we're seeing how many people were able to, click through the email and the informational sort of campaign that we've done around it. And this has gone to targeted groups of over 60 people to meet that audience target that you were just mentioned. So it's not just going to, air staff or C2E2 members. So whether they attended or not, that could have just been a conflict. So we're definitely going to, continue outreach so that way we're able to still reach that target audience.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. With regards to the policy comments, we had discussed the Dominion, how the county had been creating comments, and we will, provide those when I get in touch with Steve. And so the county had submitted comments to that, and that was for Dominion's VPP.
Same thing that many of us submitted.
Yes.
I don't think they'd submitted the same comments.
Oh, we did not submit your comments, but yes,
No, but
Elizabeth
we
had drafted.
You did, I did. I know several.
You submitted those.
Yeah, we submitted those as individuals.
Yes.
But that's the same issue.
Same
The
issue.
same request for feedback from Dominion.
Yes, yep, for the pilot.
Right, and
And then we had also,
Jennifer.
Jen
you ready
also
for
was
the-
part of the comments, yeah.
Yeah, she said she would have some questions.
And that should be a pretty quick turnaround because they have to file with the State Corporation Commission by, I think, December 1st. So I doubt they would let us see a draft, but we'll see the filing.
Yeah, exactly.
Other policy engagement opportunities, so this is submitting in conjunction with, is also collaborating with other local governments to support the RGGI amicus brief. So RGGI is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is aimed to reduce climate change emissions that have, and they have fallen, hundreds of millions to deal with impacts of extreme weather events. With regards to representation, these are just a few of the, conferences, or, you may have seen us or air staff at any of these events, but BEPCA is, local government entities and they're organized to contract for municipal electricity services from Dominion. Charge Smart was an EV charging cohort from Northern Virginia communities at a national facilitation event. The MWCOG, who you're probably familiar with, but in collaboration with CPO, we're building energy working groups. The VAEEC forum is the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council annual meeting. VESPN, we're a local government working group focused on energy, climate, implementation and policy. GMU, the Virginia Climate Center, and their Fuse building. So they recently just held an event that focused on extreme heat and climate risk assessments, and they released their Virginia's first climate assessment. And then the PJM, that's not there, but PJMCC is a group of local governments that advocate for clean energy issues at the regional grid operating level. And this is just sort of, sharing our, active engagement across local jurisdictions as well.
Jenna, could we learn more about that PJM group? That's very interested in that.
Sure. Yep.
I was pretty amazed when I was getting up to speed at all with things like this that Steve in particular is connected with. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, if you want to just briefly touch on this, but this is, our upcoming timeline and, as Jason alluded to, the program update, we will get to it by the winter solstice. We accelerate, that'll be, produced around Earth Day, beginning conversations now, working on it throughout those months. Then the EV program updates, obviously, Emily had discussed that last meeting and, those are ongoing. And then residential program update will be briefly touched upon.
I can mention a couple things and Ally can fill in the details, but we've been working on, kind of framing up kind of what we call sort of the next generation of how we approach, going back up, like greenhouse gas inventory. 97% of the emissions are not county government operations. The board is very clear that they want more focus on those areas. Not that the county operations aren't important, lead by example, but they're pretty clear about getting into these spaces where most of the emissions are. You get the buildings being big, transportation being big. So the EV piece is one piece, not the only piece of the transportation, but in terms of what the air teams are working on. And for residential program, we've been looking at, again, this question of what can we do with funding that we have right now? And then with funding we hope to have and, moving forward, the FY27 budget's in development now. And so I've been trained very well, not to get ahead of my leadership on anything related to budget, and certainly not ahead of Mark Schwartz related to budget. So I won't say anything else about it, but, we've been looking at, again, this sort of scalable, what can we do with, the resources we have, and then what can we do with additional resources? So for example, starting out with kind of the education piece, what resources can we make available for people to understand what choices they have? And then scaling up from there, can we get into things like energy coaching? Or going even further, you've got this climate action fund. Can we use that to help support energy audits for property owners? So things like that. So that's kind of the nutshell thumbnail what we're looking at. And then I'll remind me of the three main buckets that we talked about with
Like what we're.
Oh, there's both of them. There's the energy efficiency.
Oh, yeah. Energy efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy as like the three things we need to do to get from present day to net zero.
And then the other.
And then across those, the idea of the program is to meet people where they're at. So having, pieces that target people who don't know anything about home energy and they just need to learn to like the plan and then the planning stage. So maybe someone kind of knows what to do but doesn't know how to start. And then there's people who are ready to implement but are like there's some barrier that they're not able to overcome. So I think as part of those understanding where people are, we did a survey or a feedback form a few months ago that hopefully you all saw and maybe some of you answered. So just to like get a better sense of what are the main challenges and what are the resources that people are looking for that will like be able to help them take the steps to electrify and reduce the energy usage of their home.
So it's a work in progress.
More to
come. I think certainly on the front end, it's stuff we're going to get working on pretty soon. Resource hubs and kind of that front end education. There's lots of good stuff out there already too. So there's that. But so some of it we might point people to resources that exist, and some of it might be things that we develop specifically for Arlington. And just go forward from there.
Questions? Yeah, I know that David's not a commissioner, but Doug, you're ceding your time.
Oh, right.
Go ahead. I think Doug is pointing to you.
I'm sorry, somebody raised their hand, that's all I saw. Sorry,
Yeah,
Madam
yeah,
Chair.
yeah.
I
Go
just saw
for it.
somebody raise-
So
I
can
wasn't
speak.
recognizing it, but that's not my power, that's your power to recognize something.
All right, I shall wield my power to recognize.
So, hi, Jason. Doug connected us
yeah.
and
yeah.
looking forward to trying to talk more about this.
Great.
I gave a presentation at Elizabeth's energy subcommittee about home electrification. And so, I would love to spend some time learning more about what you're thinking and what the opportunities are, because at least from the work I've done and what I understand, there's a huge opportunity, not just to help with greenhouse gas emissions, but also to save Arlingtonians money, which can also improve our tax base ultimately as people reinvest that money into our communities. And there's also ways, I think, to really help with affordable housing when it comes to, affording housing is not affordable if you can't afford your rent, your utilities as well as your rent. So it's a bigger picture package. One question I am curious about, I love what you were talking about there. Are you also looking at including engagement with contractors? And the reason why I flag that is because they are the gatekeepers, and most people don't want to think about this stuff. They don't want to put the effort into this stuff, and it's understandable because it's often being done in an emergency.
Yes.
Yes. Short answer. Yeah, I think, and that was definitely one of the things identified in the survey is like trouble finding a contractor that will do what, or not even just to do what you want to do, but just period, having like a trusted source. So that is definitely something we want to work from both sides of like providing residents with resources to find a contractor, but then also on the other side, definitely like engaging more with the contractors. I think there's like an avenue through the Dominion programs because they have their qualified contractors list already to, enter into the Dominion rebate and incentive programs. And I know you were more involved with the like contractor listening session, or I forget what you.
Yeah.
If there's anything.
No, that's huge for sure. And it's one of the main things we heard. I mean, I think as some of us who own property, own home, it's always a challenge, no matter what you want done. Okay, who's going to do this? Can I trust them? So I think this is no different, but the stakes are pretty high. I think.
Huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll connect with you at the end of the meeting.
Okay, great. So that's the preview. It's, work in progress.
And now we will turn it over to Ally.
Yes. Introducing.
I guess I can just, before we jump into the e-bike program, just introduce myself. So I'm Ally Shepard. I joined in March, at the end of March. So my title is Energy Programs Implementation Specialist, and that can mean a lot of things. And I'm working on several things. One, leading the e-bike voucher program, and then also we'll be leading our home energy residential programs, whatever we call that. And just as some background, I don't know how much of an intro you want to know about me, but I grew up outside Pittsburgh, and then I've been in the Boston area for the last like over a decade. I went to MIT, studied chemical engineering, and then I was in energy consulting for a few years. Back to MIT to do a master's in technology and policy. And then I worked for the Boston Regional Planning Agency, which is the like Metro Washington COG equivalent for the Boston area. So I have more of a technical background, but have slowly been transitioning towards like local government and working with people and helping people save money and reduce emissions and all those things. So it's been great to be here for the last, I guess, 7 months. If I can do math. It's such a yeah. And we're working on. I did, yeah. I moved here for the job, so it's been it was a big move, but it's been really cool to get to know a new area.
Did you work on e-bikes in Boston?
I did not, but they are doing kind of. But I was doing like an e-cargo bike study was the only thing I touched on. So actually e-bikes are kind of a newer area.
Did you ever come across a guy named Patrick Kelsey?
That doesn't ring
Okay.
bells, but
My brother does e-bike stuff.
amazing. Okay. Usually it's a small world.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that I don't.
That was
know
my
the name,
assumption.
but yeah. Okay, so I can jump into the program. I know you've heard about this several times, so I hope not to be too redundant. But as an overview, so the e-bike voucher program, we are providing around 243 vouchers to Arlington residents to purchase an e-bike. And we have two types of vouchers. There's a standard voucher, which is $600. We have 178 of those. And then we have 65 enhanced vouchers, which are for $1,650. And the enhanced vouchers are available for income qualified residents. So functionally, the way that people qualify for that is to be actively enrolled in a set of, we have a list of DHS programs or Department of Human Services programs, or they live in an affordable housing unit. So that's where the numbers represent a split in funding 50-50 towards standard vouchers and enhanced vouchers. And sorry, the enhanced voucher also has a $100 bike lock voucher. And so as Jenna mentioned, this is funded by the Department of Energy's Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant, or EECDG, and it's almost $270,000. And we were awarded the grant in 2024, and the period will end at the end of March of 2026. So we're actually very rapidly approaching the end of that grant, but we are definitely on track to get all that money out in the community over the next year.
Allie, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but is any of that, it sounds like some of the funds have already gone out.
Yes.
Is the rest of the funding from DOE in jeopardy with the change in administration? Do you have any?
We don't have any information that you don't have. We are remaining very optimistic that it's a program that I feel like I haven't heard much about. So we're hopeful that it will, but yeah, as you noted, we're well underway, so we're gonna be able to make it happen regardless of what happens. But yeah, it's a good question. And so we're working with Eco Action to help implement the program. They've been helping a lot with some outreach and some admin with processing. There's a lot of admin work to get these vouchers out in the community. And we also have 11 participating bike shops that are part of the program. So they're in and around Arlington. And yeah, we officially launched kind of publicly in 2025, and it will carry through that in 2026. So this text looks really small on the screen, but I'll just walk through a timeline because my brain functions in timelines. So as I mentioned, I joined in late March, and I took on the project management of this program. And so in the first few months, we were doing a lot of admin setup. We were formalizing our partnership with Eco Action, figuring out what exactly does the program design look like. And then in June through July, we developed the program guidelines, which are mainly the guidelines that we have the participating bike shops agree to, but it lays out all of the legal and fun administrative things that are it means to be a participant in the program. We did a lot of bike shop recruitment, and then we also were preparing for the application. The application is what residents who were interested would submit to officially be considered to receive a voucher. And so as I mentioned, we have 11 bike shops signed on at the end of July. If you want to know them, I definitely have them. I rattle them off. And then, in mid-July to mid-August was the busy month. We finalized the application. We translated to Spanish. We created and translated a lot of outreach materials, planned for a whole whirlwind of outreach, and then figured out that, or just finalized the eligibility verification process, which I mentioned. We worked with DHS and CPHD to do that. And then in terms of who gets a voucher, it was just a random selection process. So we just established what that would look like ahead of time. And then we opened the application on August 14th, which I think many of you were aware. And so we had that open for 2 weeks, and we received around 2,800 applications, which was incredible. We were overwhelmed by the interest, and that was definitely a good problem to have. But I felt very bad saying you didn't get one to 90% of the applicant. But yeah, so for the following few weeks, we reviewed the applications, checked for eligibility for the enhanced voucher, and then did just a random selection for those 200.
Random selection. Computer generated.
Yeah, I just on Excel, you can assign random numbers to each applicant, and then just rank them 1 to 2,800, nothing too fancy. And then, so on September 29th, we sent out that first round of vouchers, and they have 45 days to redeem it. And if they don't, they essentially pass up on their opportunity to use the voucher. And we do have a wait list. So we have a wait list. And so those vouchers will be moved on to the wait list. And then that group will have another 45 days to redeem it, which takes us to around early January, which should give us enough time to do all of the administrative closeout of the grant by the end of March.
So is there any maybe you're about to answer this, but any kind of accountability from do you get any kind of report back from the people or they get the voucher?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that. It's a good question. Yeah. Before the kind of evaluation piece, I'll just speak a little bit about the outreach that we did. So on the right, we have some examples of some flyers and websites, but we had like social media campaign through DES, DHS, housing, Eco Action. We were physically and put flyers around at community centers, libraries. We were at Bike to Work Day. We did translate all of the materials into Spanish, including the application so people could apply in Spanish. We tabled at the county fair. We were there for those 3 days. We and Eco Action split up. We went to community centers, libraries during the application period and brought like iPads so people could apply on the spot if they wanted to. And then we have a lot of work communicating with the 2,800 people that applied. So for the recipients, we've been sending vouchers, sending reminders. So hopefully everyone does redeem. We have like, after you redeem it, a kind of your new e-bike toolkit, which is a bunch of resources and stuff on our website. And yeah, for the wait list, we said, you'll hear back from us by the end of the year about your status. And then for both the waitlist and non-recipients, just pointing them towards other like Arlington resources. There's a great Capital Bike Share has the Capital Bike for All. I don't know if I messed that up, but it's a great where if you meet income eligibility requirements, you can get an annual membership to use the bike share for just $5 plus you get monthly credit. So yeah, sharing things like that. And then I'll just give a quick update about where we are with the redemption so far. So this is as of like 5 p.m. today. We have, so I guess just to be clear, the 243 that I was saying is the number of people who get a voucher, and then the enhanced bike, the 65, we had to separate into like the bike voucher and the lock voucher. So that's why the numbers don't quite add up to the 243, but essentially between the standard and the enhanced e-bike, we have 75 new e-bikes out around town, which is really exciting. And you can also see the enhanced e-bike has a much higher redemption rate right now, which is what we expected. I think, as Jason alluded to, like the economic times and furlough is definitely bringing up challenges for people, because even with the $600 bike, you still will probably have to spend $1,000. But actually, I saw in an invoice someone found an e-bike for like $650, which was amazing. But anyway, so yeah, we are a little bit. I think we're right about halfway in that 45-day period, and we have about 34% redemption. So we'll be tracking that closely and seeing where we are at the end, and then what the next mini round will look like. And then just the last thing I will say, which gets to the point about evaluations. We have a few tools we're using. One is called OpenPath, and this is an app that was developed by the National Renewable Energy Lab. And essentially, it collects data anonymously, but you download the app and you just leave it running in the background, and it tracks where you travel. And then you go in and you label the trip as like, I walked, and the purpose of my trip, so to work or whatever. You can see on the left picture is kind of what that looks like. And then there's a dashboard that calculates your GHG emissions, your energy usage for the week, and you can actually see like yourself compared to the other people, or there's a bunch of cool ways to break the data down. So we're sending this information both to the voucher recipients so we can monitor or evaluate how they're using their e-bikes and we get to some greenhouse gas emissions calculations. And then also we'll be sending it to the non-recipients to kind of get a bit of a control group to better understand travel patterns. And then for the voucher recipients, we also have a short 2-question survey that we're going to send out every 2 weeks so we can collect data regularly. So it just asks how many miles did you ride your e-bike in the last week and what mode did that primarily replace. So we're excited to see what that looks like. And we just sent this out, so I don't have any data to report, but can report back in a few months. And then lastly, just collecting some testimonials. We've already received some really nice emails from people about how it's like made such a difference in their transportation and really enjoying the e-bike. So yeah, excited to keep hearing from people like how the program is impacting them. And that is all I have. So can they answer questions or discuss anything?
Brad.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that update. I have 3 questions. The first most important one is why didn't you pick my number? I mean, other people have that question. I would have got that number. The second question is, did we have flexibility? Did we have to stick with those numbers of, 600 and whatever it was, 1350? Because given the demand, could we have gone down to like 300 and gotten a lot more e-bikes out there for,
Yeah.
So the second question. And the third one is, if the intent here is to get e-bikes on the road, not just for those subset of people that got it, but really to have this scalable to encourage other people to buy them, is there a way in our evaluation plan to show or to work with the dealers to capture their increased sales in e-bikes so that we can say, hey, not just these first 240, but now we have it after a year, 1,000 e-bikes, and we wouldn't have had that unless we stimulated that market, right?
That's a great question. Okay, maybe we'll work backwards. I love the idea. I feel like I've like formed really good relationships with the bike shops, and they've been super excited. So I have no doubt that they would be willing to like share some semblance of that data. Because I think that is that's not the point of the program, is to like get people e-bikes, but is to like create a shift in how we think about transportation in Arlington. So that, I think the word of mouth is really important. The other piece of data that I don't know how we would collect, but I would love to know, of like people that didn't get vouchers, if they were already really excited about it, are gonna like still go out and buy an e-bike. So that would be interesting to, if you have ideas how to collect that.
We have a control group, you said here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, you can also see that control group eventually
Yeah.
buy one other.
No, that's a good point. Maybe we do like in 6 months a survey to the, okay. Someone's capturing that. That's great. Your second question was,
About altering the dollar.
oh, the amounts. Yeah, so I think because this was tied to a grant, and we've like in the grant, we set up very clearly like how many vouchers we were gonna have, what the amount was, and we have to report regularly on that. That was kind of, and given the tumultuous timing, like we don't want to update the grant right now, so that was
Contract mods and that.
Yeah.
Just be quiet and let it go.
yeah, so that was, and I think this is like, this is also, I know we call it a program, sometimes we call it a pilot. I think what I'm excited to do is like learn about what we're gonna get all the data of like how much the bikes cost and how much people are paying. So I'm really excited to see like if we are able to do another round in the future of like how would we adjust those amounts, and like what maybe is the right amount to spur that someone to invest their own money beyond what the voucher is. So yeah, hopefully can do that exercise.
Thank
Oh, sorry.
Mentioned this. Oh, can I go?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Did you means test this at all? Was there income?
Yeah. So for not half the vouchers, half the funding goes towards the enhanced vouchers. And so those are the general guideline is like 80% AMI.
Okay.
But we didn't do any like income verification collection. We just asked if people were enrolled in one of the eligible programs. So
Okay.
there's like the whole list of DHS programs,
But
or if they live in affordable.
You could have gotten the $600 voucher at any
Yep.
income.
Yeah, sorry. Anyone, for that one, it was anyone in Arlington, or that is an Arlington resident over the 18.
And so you're kind of tracking how likely someone was to actually use that voucher. And I wonder how the baseline income factors into that.
Yeah, I also wonder that. And we didn't collect, just in an effort, like we didn't want to collect personal data for lots of, and like for FOIA requirement, like we have to navigate all of that. So yeah, we didn't like in the application ask what your income band is.
Maybe in the follow-up that Rob's doing, people might disclose that voluntarily in a band.
Yeah.
You know,
And actually, I need to double check this, but I hope I'm not speaking incorrectly. The Open Path tool, there's like a demographic survey at the beginning. It's optional, but from what I've seen, actually the people who have signed up have taken it. So I believe income is one of the questions that will help too. Yeah.
Joe?
2 questions. One, was there a requirement working with the bike shops for them to buy new e-bikes, or is there reuse involved too?
Yeah, so we the program guidelines required it to be a new e-bike, but I do know some of the bike shops have like certified refurbished programs, but unfortunately just like for this, yeah, we set that as the requirement, but that's something to. It was more of an effort to like protect people from not buying like bikes that are not high quality, yeah.
And the other question I had, I'm already starting to forget it. So I bought a regular bike a couple months ago, and I know I was in a rush before tariffs hit. Have you seen throughout the program itself, the monitoring of the pricing fluctuating rapidly?
That's a good question. Well, unfortunately, only have like, I guess it'll probably be like a 90-day snapshot that starts September 30th is the first date. I could definitely, that's something I'm interested in asking the bike shops of how their prices have changed. I'm sure they have some of that data or could at least anecdotally share that. Yeah, it's a good question though.
Evan?
I hate to be contrary because everybody knows there's no bigger pusher for transportation electrification than Arlington and me, but I've been part of at least half a dozen conversations in the last couple of months about people complaining bitterly about the proliferation of e-bikes. Some of it's coming because of what I think is overblown fear of fire hazards when they get stored, which is real, but I think overblown. And so I was just curious if you have any thoughts tied to this program generally about that. And the second one, which is very real, is the increased hazard to pedestrians from the e-bike zooming along. I mean, the worst case scenario, and be real contrarian, you end up discouraging pedestrians because of the hazards of trying to interact with e-bikes. And so has the county thought at all about the safety and for Arlingtonians and how they have negative impacts on other very good modes of transportation like regular bikes and pedestrians as a part of this program or e-bikes in general?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know if I have, I guess, just on the battery piece, that's definitely a real concern. And we are trying to share, like after people buy their bikes, sharing with them, like what are the ordinance, how to safely charge. And I think one thing that with this program is everyone's buying like the bikes have to be certified to certain safety standards and they will come with the charger. So I think typically the fires are coming from like bikes that are purchased online or like lower cost bikes that aren't always like certified. So but it is a big concern. And I think one incident creates a really big problem, even if it's just like a messaging problem of people are scared of something that could be safe if it's done properly. Yeah, the like use of roadways and transportation is, I think we're like in a really interesting era. This is not like a county stance, just me. Like, I think we're in an interesting era of transition where we're like learning how to re-navigate road space. And yeah, with the rise of e-bikes is like, it's very different. It's like a totally different transportation mode. And I think it's a question of like, yeah, if our streets are set up to accommodate like the, 8 different types of modes that people are on. But I don't know if you have like, and I think it's something for us to like work with the transportation and the road.
Are there other ordinance updates on where like bikes could go, but e-bikes couldn't? Like I did witness an e-bike like zip through the Chestnut Hills playground the other day. That's like too fast to go through the playground. Like I shouldn't get in there, but I don't know if there's even a way to enforce keeping e-bikes out of like purely pedestrian places like parks and playgrounds and stuff.
I mean, these are good questions. I think too, I'm thinking about the update to the MTP that's underway, the Mass Transportation Plan. The way Ali framed it into this era of transition. I think this would be, this is kind of a topic in that space because you're right. A lot changing. And like you said, I've seen 2 middle schoolers on a cabbie e-bike, like just like rocketing through like Harlem Park or something. And that's dangerous because there's 2 people on it, no helmets, and then the speed. So there's kind of related issues. And I think about the ego piece too, where like I'll be riding my bike and I'll look over my shoulder and the pace at which that bike behind me is coming. At first you're like, am I going that slow? And then you realize nothing. It's an e-bike, and then I feel okay about it. But no, it's a fair.
I think we'd rather like work out these issues before they kind of fester into some kind of opposition to the overall policy.
Just addressing this, Elizabeth, so in your new e-bike, kit, your new kit, when you get your e-bike, there actually aren't, I mean, to the best of our knowledge and research, we found bike laws of where they're allowed, and so to
That's helpful.
roadways, parks. And that also goes into the 3 classes of speed limits explained.
That's great.
Sounds good. Good.
So 2 comments now, not
Kevin,
just questions. One is, oh, I'm sorry.
Please, Kevin and then Lisa. and then-
No, I'm good.
So-
Kevin's asked my question.
Enforcement's probably even more important than infrastructure. So trying to encourage some ticketing is a way of discouraging bad behavior. And the other point is, you can speed control the e-bikes. So I don't know, I think all of them do come with speed controllers. I just want to make sure that they're all, whatever's on county roads is set consistent with county laws. So about how fast you're allowed to go. So,
Lisa and then Joe.
Right, so will you all be tracking these e-bikes through their end of life? And will Arlington be providing any services or even resources on how people can properly recycle or dispose of them when that time comes?
Good question. We don't necessarily have a mechanism other than people voluntarily sharing what they're doing with their e-bikes, and we'll see how long people use the app for. We are only asking for a short period of time for program evaluation purposes. So no, we aren't necessarily planning to track through the next decade or so. But I think that's a really good point of sharing resources about disposal. We're also exploring options for maintenance and how to stay on top of that, and then battery replacement and things like that. So that's definitely a good, I think, follow up in over the next few years of sharing those resources. Thank you.
Joe?
I was just gonna chime in on the discussion earlier about the ordinance. I don't know if there's the enforcement issue, but I think there's the knowledge issue that has to be. When I bought a bike, I looked up and read the ordinances of when you're supposed to use the bike on the street versus when it's safe. When it's not safe, then you can use the sidewalk, but nobody else is reading this. So nobody else is reading the ordinance of it, and it's pretty clearly laid out in the ordinance, but nobody's reading it. So I think that just with the e-bikes, but with all biking in general, I think the county needs to do more education around that.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. I think that's an area for Bike Arlington I know they have a lot of educational resources, and it's a great website. So connecting people to the resources or making ordinance, the 101 of the ordinance.
More questions on e-bikes?
Trevor had his hand up online.
Oh, Trevor.
Or I think there's 2 notifications on.
Sorry, Trevor.
No question from me. I just wanted to say it seems like a fantastically executed program. So congrats.
They all have their hand up online. No.
Jen reminded me that.
Jen. Hi, Jen.
Jen has joined.
And
Lily has
Lily.
joined.
Yeah.
And the Eco Ambassador will be in this space of education too, for the Eco Ambassadors program. So that's another venue we could use to educate about how to use your e-bike safely.
And you may want to also consider working with the schools, because chances are it's a lot of kids that are the ones that are the offenders, and getting to the parents through the school system, and maybe a good way to educate on the ordinances and things that we're supposed to follow.
So, thank you very much, Ally. That was really interesting.
We should
How about
clap
the
for Ally.
question?
Yeah.
Yes, member. So while Jason is here, it'd be great to talk about the Green Building Incentive Program more. But we also have Henry's letter. And we're on time as if we had not had our meeting. Because we took the chance to really let's talk about GBIP just for a little bit more, and then we'll wrap it up. So next week, you'll get the detailed outline to the Planning Commission. So is there anything that you would like to tell us about what it's? So we know that for new construction, new buildings, still focused, you're going to LEED 5.0. You're going for bonus density in return for people to up, right?
Yep, yep.
And thinking about a FIAS pilot with possibly supported by some county funds, like out of the Climate Action Fund, to help with consulting for people to try this new
Right.
higher level certification.
Yep.
The CPACE program, you're hoping you'll get uptake for existing buildings.
In part, yeah, and also potential. Well, yeah, I could say a few things that if,
Go ahead.
yeah. Now, I will say the caveat I'm gonna give you is it's much better for you to see it laid out in the slide deck that'll be presented to the planning commission.
We will look, won't we?
Yeah, I'm sure you will. I know you will. And but a couple of themes that I think, Cindy touched on some of them. So certainly, there's we call the traditional pathway, which maybe sounds like maybe that's the wrong term to use because traditional does not necessarily conjure up looking ahead.
I don't know, the developers would have liked to
They
do
like
the same
it, I
old
know.
same.
I know.
Probably attractive.
And even though, there's this current concern, again, I keep saying it's like, hopefully it's not a long-term thing about bonus density with current economics and the markets not being as valuable as it used to be, but it's a tool that we have available to us as the county. So we're still gonna use it.
Yeah, and you have to be careful. This policy you hope might last for as long as 5 years. You can't give away the store.
Right.
You have to be
Right.
really careful about
Right.
that because bonus density feels free, but it's not free.
It's not.
It calls on all kinds of
Yeah.
county resources, schools, streets, you name it.
And like exactly, like we talked about through some of the engagement is because we want uptake, of course, but we don't want to set the bar so low you can just step over it. And you don't want to set the bar so high that then, we're not going to pursue it. So, I think you're going to see the traditional pathway, but upgrading to Elite 5. One of the things that we've done and looked closely at, particularly in the baseline prerequisite space, is there are things that are part of broader efforts that are underway that one of our goals was if we could streamline those things, either defer to a lead credit that already exists, a new lead credit that simplifies it, or say, well, for example, like when it comes to urban heat mitigation, the climate action plan is going to have strategies around just that. And so rather than get ahead of that and try to frame it up in a green building policy where it's really broader than a green building policy, I think it's going to be a community-wide strategy, involves other partners in the county, in county government and beyond. We can basically defer to that process. We're trying to streamline and prioritize, focusing on carbon, and because it's one of the things we heard, and not build a pit for things that either already exist or that we can refer to. So that's another theme in the so-called traditional pathway. You mentioned the FIAS pilot. We heard, I think through the engagement that there's just at least locally unfamiliarity with it. And it's true, it's not that common. I mean, COG recently did a survey of the region, and there are very few projects that have gone through that. And the ones that have, some of them, like I think one of them was a house, like a single family home project, but not larger. DC might have a few.
So this is a different kind of certification from LEED. It's passive house,
Yeah,
something.
it's much more focused on, energy and carbon than, that's really it.
Pretty highly. Sets the bar pretty high.
It sets the bar
And
high.
that's why there are so few projects. And that's why the county's interested in introducing it,
See if
and
we
getting more awareness of it as an option.
And the benefits that come from it to the owner are if you hold the property. That's the other thing we learned. So you might have to put in more upfront, but you're going to see significant performance and energy savings. But that only helps you if you own the property. So the idea was, well, could you pilot that with an affordable housing project? That's kind of what we're looking at, proposing that. And then how do we encourage it or incentivize it? We're looking at the Climate Action Fund as a potential. None of this is set in stone yet, still kind of in proposal stage, but that's getting back to the board and like market transformation and getting beyond county operations. That's one way we hope to use that fund, is with the FIAS pilot. And then for existing buildings, again, that's not really, they don't go through the site plan process. So sort of in a similar model, but in a different place as the home energy program that we talked about, but focusing this more on sort of larger multifamily or larger buildings. We would see if we could use the Climate Action Fund to get into that space to help with energy benchmarking and that space, and kind of move people along and help them understand. We would offer technical assistance, potentially some other resources to bring to bear. So that's kind of how we pilot the existing building and see if we could get into that, because that's, the county has very little authority there, of course, we talked about that. So that's an area we're trying to figure out, how do we get into that space? See if we can get some education and ultimately action there. And then the other thing I'll mention briefly is adaptive reuse. So, that has evolved significantly since a year ago when this was first proposed. There's now an administrative regulation that's being developed. And there's this obviously very primary goal of moving these things quickly, not, getting bogged, I shouldn't say bogged down, not having to go through the full site plan process, but a much shorter, not getting into the public realm, but just focusing on the building.
Adaptive reuse being taking office buildings and turning them into housing.
Yep. So we're going to be working with our AED CPHD folks who are doing the admin reg, just to see what can we put in the green building space there, particularly focusing on energy. Again, we don't want to run afoul of the primary goal, but can we educate and inform that process to give them choices and options and the kind of things they could consider as, because every one of these is going to be different in terms of what they do. Are they replacing systems? Are they not replacing systems? It's a much more custom and one at a time.
So can I ask you a question about adaptive reuse? And you might not be the person, it might be people who are working on the regs. But we sent a letter last month about an adaptive reuse. There is no SPRC process. There's no way, there's no interactive community process because these things are so fast tracked. But the county board asked us to advise them on these. And we tried, but there's no public information. There's such limited public information. We basically sent a letter.
Yeah.
Courtesy of Alex that said, this is adaptive reuse is a great concept, but if you, which shouldn't, still we should be trying to make these new buildings where it makes sense, as efficient and energy, forward thinking as possible. And you asked us to tell you if these are, and we can't tell you because we can't get any information.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about how we'd love to develop specific kinds of criteria for these kind of projects, but there's no point in doing that if we aren't going to have any information. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about public information. I know the primary goal is to fast track them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
and that's not this part. It's not OSIP. It's not your bureau.
Right. I mean, that's the short answer. I totally get what you're saying. I think our role is really more just to see if we can kind of infuse this thinking into that process and figure out what opportunities they could take.
That would help. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Doug.
Jason, really glad to hear, just in the short remarks you just gave, that you've got a mastery of some of the issues here, and that's really excellent. You've got personally involved in this project. I know Paul and Vic here, you're obviously hands-on. I think that's great. Wonderful. Now, and there are a lot of really tough choices to make here and very difficult, not easy at all. Now I'm going to make it even more complicated and bring out another aspect. And this came up, and I hope you're aware of this, and actually Susan Cunningham in a meeting of this commission some months ago, when we were talking about the big picture here. And Susan pointed out that the standard site plan conditions are also an important aspect of this. And since that time, a lot of the private people in the county and organizations who are interested in this issue have been focusing on how change to the GIP would integrate with changes, upgrades to the standard site plan conditions. So I'm not asking you to address that so much as just want to make you aware that these kind of go together when you're thinking big picture.
Right.
So, one argument is that we shouldn't rush into changing the GBIP without also having at least beginning of a process to upgrade standard site plan conditions. My understanding would be that would be a whole different group, not your group, a whole different group that probably hasn't even begun to think about upgrading standard site plan conditions yet. So it's all complicated, moving pieces. Just want to make you aware of that.
Right, and we did send a letter, which, we sent a letter last month on saying site plan conditions should be updated in conjunction with any GBIP. And you saw that. So it's nice of Doug to say you don't have to respond, but no, it's not respond.
No, it's actually, I'm glad you brought it up because that's another, we've been given this thought. We saw the letter. In fact, the letter prompted me to say, hey, wait a minute, what about Senate late night conditions? Couple of things, and I think it's a little bit of chicken and egg on some of them. So I did go back and look at what happened in 2020. And even though the 2020 board report had an appendix that talked about some standard site plan conditions, those weren't updated for until 2 years later in 2022. And so I looked at that, we talked about it, and here's my thinking on it. Recommendation that I've made to the process is, I think set the bar on the GBIP and you figure out where to set the next rung of the ladder down in the standard conditions. And the other piece is there's additional engagement that's going to need to happen on those, because it's no longer a question of the uptake of, voluntary opt-in. It applies to everybody. And so we're going to hear more from the development community about that than we heard on the GBIP, because that's technically lit, it's voluntary. I think it's super important, like you just said, Doug, because in your letter it talks about like, where is that, how close or far apart should they be?
Build a higher thing if you don't know where the floor is.
But I think looking at the past model and that lag and like setting first bar first and the engagement piece, to me calls for, we need to re-engage in a broader sense, but can apply to every project that goes through the board.
So would there be a sentence like that in whatever comes out of your group?
I think the board report's gonna have to address it. Yeah, in some form or another, even if it's just a narrative,
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I still have to run this through the board yet. That's coming, by 2 briefings with the boards for the GBIP. So this will be part of that, and we'll get direction around that too, about which way to
I
go.
want to raise that with the planning commission, Tilly Peterson too.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. I'm glad you wrote the letter because, I mean, frankly, just to me, I hadn't been thinking about it. I think that was the point of one of the points of yours. Not that you wrote
Right.
it for me, remind me, but did remind me.
Yeah, that's good. And I want to call out Lily Diaz. It's not shown because it was her work on One Roslyn where she just came back and said the bottom, if they don't do GBIP, they've got to do nothing. It's ridiculous. You got to raise the floor.
Yeah.
So thank you, Lily. But back to the GBIP. So for the one last question, although other people may have questions. So we have talked a lot at this group about picking from LEAD 5.0, the things, making some of these items required, because you get a lot of points just for building in Arlington, building in a transit-rich environment. And there are a lot of things here that you could get a decent number of points. And we talked about, and in fact, I don't know that any of you guys looked at the site plan conditions letter that we actually sent out. It was approved in principle, and then Rob and I changed it. We actually suggested specific categories that we thought the standard, if you did like standard site plan conditions as LEED silver, requiring these 3 or 4 categories, and then you could do GBIP as LEED gold or platinum. Rob and I possibly overstepped our bounds, but we put that in there specifically. But I know you guys are thinking of just relying on LEED 5.0 and not requiring certain special things. Is that right?
Well, we will have that. There's still the baseline prerequisites.
Yeah.
That are above and beyond. So some of them are specific LEED credits. Some of them are like other things above that.
So you have to do those for GBIP.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. It may not probably won't exactly align with the way you're thinking about it, but I think it's a
The
common.
important thing, I think, is to get refugees.
Well, yeah, just to build on what you were saying, yeah, exactly. We had an energy efficiency renewable energy getting a certain minimum number of points there, but then the other kind of baseline requirements, I mean, what we heard from developers, and thank you again for putting that together, was, we don't want to, anything that they do, they should be getting LEED points for, right? So we don't want to, put something in a potential add-on or something that they have to give, that they don't get points on in LEED. And we want them to focus on the things that LEED that matter most for the climate and energy, and that's the point of identifying those points.
Yeah.
Scott.
So has anyone, I'm not sure, start of the rebuilding center program, why LEED was, well, I guess I do know why LEED was chosen, but has anyone considered looking outside of that box to say there could be an alternate path within the incentive program
that doesn't require all of the bells and whistles that go along with the LEED certification. But gets at the core, excuse me, the core of the carbon equation, electrification, and a few other key ingredients that might be more palatable to developers and a little easier to nudge into place, but doesn't require the certification. I mean, LEED certification is a administrative pain in the butt. It's a cost. I know my company charges anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 just to help the client get the plaque on the wall. That's not counting anything you do in the building itself.
Right.
So my suggestion is to consider that there may be another path to marry onto that, that focuses on key ideas without having to get the plaque, but that you can use Energy Star, other metrics that the builder can perform to and are easy enough to verify year upon year. And then you may see some more traction.
Yeah, I thought, no, it's a relevant thought. Not a relevant thought. Because I think that's like, for example, looking at what Alexandria is contemplating. You could pick any of these. Now, interesting, they have a very different model. It's not an incentive program. But it also has a lot of flex built into it too, in terms of like a negotiation. I haven't fully researched it all, but just getting familiar with it. But I think like most things, there's pros and cons.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, again, there are a lot of benefits to getting all the way through a LEED certification process.
Yeah, exactly.
And they touch upon more parts of the bill. But you could look at some simple things like envelope design and air filtration. And you could look at insulated properties, and you could look at energy, predicted energy, and performed baseline, right? And then get into the adaptive reuse. You can ask them to quantify the carbon sequestration embodied in these, in what you're saving. So there are some things that you can come up with as a criteria list that would be definitely in the same spirit, predominantly hitting the most important things, but not require all of the rest of the others.
Understood. No,
Is there an accountability piece for going through, who makes sure that this stuff happens if you don't go through the?
So that would just be written into the incentive program. I mean, you would have to have something to prove it. So
Yes, they have to offer.
sub-metering of spaces, you know.
So maybe they pay you $25,000 to.
That's,
Savings for
that
them,
is just
and it would get it done.
operationally be obligated to
Right.
know anyway, you know, how much we're spending on stuff.
Right.
And they just have to share that information. And if they break significantly outside of those parameters that agreed upon, that got them.
Then you gotta go back.
Then you have to pay back.
Right.
It's not that complicated, I think. It's just sitting down and saying, what does the county think are the most important pieces of that criteria to put into that kind of a.
Right.
Cindy, also online, you have Jamie Kern, he wanted to make a public comment. He's on EC.
Okay, well, Rob and then Jamie, and then let's wrap this up so we can get to Henry's letter.
Yeah, just two quick points. One is I think that the FIAS is the other alternative pathway that they were considering.
That's even more stringent.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not lead and I mean.
As a house, that's great.
Lead.
But
But
it is.
one of the things that was surprising about the roundtable, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason or Doug or anyone else was there, was that the developers actually seem to like lead and want to
Yes.
stick.
It's
with
a known quantity.
It's because
no
it's
question.
a known quantity, but also it was a way for them to actually recoup at least some of their investment in cost because they thought having that lead plaque on the building would get them slightly higher rent. So it was an investment that had a payback. And for the county, it has that accountability and verification. So I know it's expensive, and I was surprised to hear them say that too. But they're like, they more or less said, keep it in the lead family, and then we'll do it and keep going. That's what I heard. But
I think that works well for large scale developers.
Right.
Yes.
Multiple properties, lots of experience. Smaller scale developers look at that and go, ouch, you know? And so I'm just saying that probably have it would be worth it to look at an alternative track just to see piloting
Yeah.
for.
I think there's a lot to think about, and I think we'll be talking about this in November. We'll want to write a letter, and we'll have to think about how to do this. All right, Jamie, you get the last word as a public comment.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, so I agree with the small developers. You should certainly have an alternative to the many different points, et cetera, for lead. You can have lead or equivalent. But I want to go back to the discussion about it being a difficult environment now to require too much and prevent everyone versus requiring too little and not making progress. And one thing that industry needs everywhere is certainty. And it is certain the ambition for 2050 and beyond, but it's not certain the pathway to get there. So I strongly recommend that any green building incentive program ratchet up over time, just like the country's commitments in the Paris Agreement, just like if you were, ratcheting down incentives to get development over time. Give a standard now and let the industry know in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, whatever you want, that it will be up to this level over time, so that by 2050 you do in fact reach the goal and not just let people skirt by with the bare minimum. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, and that makes sense. That's sort of, well, the existing GBIP, I think we've seen developers are coming in and doing more than was required, whether they're opting for that or not, because over time, standards are changing, technology is changing, feasibility is changing. I think it makes a lot of sense to sort of index it, figuring out how to do that, but still. All right, thank you very much. Obviously, this is an issue we'll come back to. But for now, Henry, over to you for your letter on the UCMUC.
Sure. I thought it was UCMUC, but then I think it's actually UCMUD or something. Yeah.
UCMUD.
What is it? Unified Commercial Mixed Use Development Committee.
Yes.
Well, first of all, thanks to everybody who had a chance to take a look at the letter and comments. For just some background, for those who didn't, this project is going to be a redevelopment of I believe the address was also wrong. I fixed that now. It's 3138 10th Street North. That is the National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions building. It's a lovely red brick building that is going to be demolished and put up a self-storage facility. We'll talk about that in a second, but I think, yeah, exactly, in Clarendon, yeah. So,
a low rent.
exactly.
Who would want to use space in Clarendon?
And actually, as part of the meeting too, the developer did mention that they were going to design the facade of the building to look like an apartment building to fit with the aesthetic of the surrounding environment. And I have some thoughts later in the letter, so I won't get ahead of myself there. But the long and short of it is the project is sort of expected to use less energy than if it were a residential project. So the developer, hit on that a couple of times, which is good from a overall perspective. Obviously, there's some nuance to that. Using the new scorecard, the building received a 38%. I felt very sad when I was using the scorecard doing this, because I kind of felt like I was grading an apple by using a template for an orange. So that was a bit disappointing, but there were some, finer points that I wanted from the developer just to make sure that I was giving them as fair a rating as I could. They had some additional information, and then at one point they even just pointed me to their publicly released statement on their sustainability goals, which had not very clear information. So there was not a lot of specifics. They did, they did mention that though they were not pursuing GBIP or LEED for this project, they were hoping to sort of take the spirit of those different incentives and incorporate them into their project as they continue to develop it. There was also some questions about the surrounding area. So they were hoping to have a net gain of some trees, although they were taking some trees down to build this, to do this project. They were also, as I said, they're destroying the current facility, or sorry, they're redeveloping the current facility and will be putting up a whole new building there, but they are keeping part of the red brick wall that's like on the back of the facility. They've also mentioned that they're going to incorporate some EV charging and are looking into solar, rooftop solar for the roof. That's kind of it. They do have, I'm sorry, excuse me. There's also a bioretention area in the back of the property. It was unclear, I think, to me just at that point, if that was like something that was sort of required in how that ordinance works.
It's required.
There you go.
Based on, it's the same as impervious.
Yeah. So there you go.
Have to have some place for that runoff.
Maybe you can pat yourself on the back hard.
Or you'll end up with a bruise, but,
More with that and install plants.
they did say that they were interested in doing that as well. There was a lot of interest in sustainability, which was at least good to hear. So I, put a lot of this information into the letter, already. We did caveat earlier in the letter that though the building received a low score, we believe that's because of the rating that we used and how we scored it, trying to be as fair as we could. But then I guess in the last part of the letter, the main part that I was, sorry, Jenna, you're giving yourself whiplash there. In the conclusion of the letter, this was kind of where one of the more contentious points that I've alluded to earlier came up. Several committee members who were present at the meeting questioned the selection of a self-storage facility in this site. For those of you who know where the site is just from having lived here, it's a very dense area in the middle of Clarendon. And, there's a lot of considerations around urban density and development these days, especially given shortage of affordable housing throughout the country. And so many people did, ask or question the validity of building a self-storage unit. Actually, if you Google self-storage in Arlington, there are 2 other self-storage facilities, it appears, around the corner from where this project would be located. The developer did say that there is a lower density of self-storage square footage to residents in Arlington throughout the county than what the median average across the country is. So they cited that as a reason for wanting to do this project. They also said that they expect there will be a demand for they believe there will be a demand for this, or there is already a demand that's not being met. It was a little unclear to me, what that looked like. But the topic definitely came up and I was hoping to sort of incorporate it into our letter without speaking out of turn. And so based on some of the feedback that I got from those who reviewed the letter, I tried to come at it from a environment and sustainability angle, instead of just saying there's affordable housing crisis and we need to be building more housing instead of places where people can store their comic book collections. Let's try to come at it from the environmental standpoint, where if we don't use this space wisely, we'll have to create more emissions by building somewhere else.
So I
Yeah,
made
sorry.
this comment saying, scroll down a tiny little bit now. What is the sense of the group about adding this more global comment about the use? And Elizabeth weighed in and sort of rewrote it. And I think Henry, not speaking for Henry, but I like the way you took out specific references to affordable housing.
I think we have to say something.
But yeah, and so take a look at what it says now. We feel it's important to know that urban space is limited and highly sought after. Arlington County seems to be a place where people can affordably live, work, shop, and dine, not where they store excess property. I'd probably strike now where they store excess property, just that you guys can decide, and then prioritizing the land and at residential, prioritizing this land for, let's scroll down a little bit. Prioritizing this land for purposes more in line with Arlington's forthcoming comprehensive plan. That is a great ad, I thought.
I wish there was something that was current, because the comprehensive plan is
Right.
We're
When we get to our
being redeveloped.
updated, yeah.
But it's hard to accept this choice of land use
Is it
given.
currently by right?
Is it, it's general land use plan?
It's-
Or is it specifically
They apply
developed?
for that.
It's,
Are we, I'm sorry, I'm late to this, but are we objecting because it's self-storage, or are we objecting because it's environmentally bad?
well, I think that's the question. That's exactly the question. Should we stay within our traditional scope and say environmentally, this is the building? Or are we making a more, that's exactly
I
the
think we
question.
should stay within our traditional scope. If it's environmentally bad, we say it's environmentally bad. We don't care what you're doing, dog training or alligator or self-storage, but
That is
it's
the
environmentally bad, and that's our lane. Let's not get into.
Yeah.
And how are we determining
Yeah.
that?
I'm sure the housing commission is on it.
Because the storage unit is gonna be a lower EUI than this multifamily residence.
So it's going
So
to,
from an energy, strictly energy standpoint, it's a better deal. And they may be able to make it out of materials that we can encourage that would be.
So they were not that is a possibility. They did explicitly say that they were not at the moment planning to adapt, reusing any of the existing materials.
But even if they tear it down,
Yeah,
they could do some things with modularity, stuff that could work on other aspects of sustainability. So we have to be careful if we're stepping into it in that direction.
right.
Well, I agree with that, and it also looks like the score you gave them, based largely on lack of information, speaks to what we should be addressing.
Yeah, I think I wanted to be a little careful about, hammering them for a low score, just because, again, wanting to acknowledge that we were using a scorecard that is probably better used for residential development projects.
It's not, hot water, electric hot water.
We don't call on the commission to reject the application, right? That's now the wrong stage that we're at the moment.
Oh, we just didn't think it was that bad, and I think there's a question whether we'd call on them to reject it for reasons that aren't environmental, to Doug's point. As Scott says, I think the environmental usage is probably less.
Definitely would be that an office building. And we could still ask to benchmark against this
storage facility
for the average energy use intensity of that type of building and have them meet a percentage below that.
Yeah, I think there's something to that effect in the scorecard. When I asked them for some more information specifically on that, they said that at the moment they weren't planning to commit to the benchmarking.
Sure.
But that, that could change in the future. Go.
Since this wasn't like a multifamily residential project, was the housing commission involved at the SPRC?
I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure somebody was there from the housing commission. There was also representation from civic associations, and they raised the point. They were the first person to explicitly raise the point, of course. So there was a pretty broad set of representation, but I just off the top of my head, I don't remember who the housing commission was there and who was there from them, but I'm pretty sure they were.
Kevin?
Does anybody know why the storage unit use would require them tearing down that structure and building something there, as opposed to reusing the structure? It seems like you strip everything out. Rectangular building, because they'd be redone as a storage.
Just from a design standpoint, it's because of what the existing structure does or does not allow them to do with the size of units that they rent, and to get the maximum number of those with the least amount of waste and space for things that can. So clearer spans between column bays and floor-to-floor heights probably don't matter, are probably less beneficial to them because they would push theirs down a little bit to get more floors in a certain height limit.
The one thing that just surprised me is why you would need, I'm not surprised you do everything on the interior differently, but why any of the exterior had to come down for initial
They were
use.
very clear that they weren't going to.
And because of that, my inclination would be, don't try to, I think it's appropriate to give a low score to somebody who's going to take an existing building, which I don't understand why you can't, even if you're going to completely change the use, at least save the environmental cost and the energy cost, the embodied carbon in that existing structure, which
doesn't pencil on the pro forma.
So
it's to save the facade, for example.
Well,
it requires bracing and shoring and a whole bunch of other things that are more
So
complicated.
it would require bracing and.
Yeah.
So I do think that we should figure, amazingly, we are running out of time. So I do think that we should decide if we want to include something about land use. Maybe I'm hearing a lot of negatives over there. We could just simply delete that part about it's important to note that, not thrilled with this land use.
What score does a project need to get in our new scorecard to have us encourage adoption or discourage adoption?
Like a 63. it's not a high, if you meet on everything, you get a 66. I don't know, you know, yeah, I don't know that we want to vote to reject this project because I think Henry's point is that the scorecard, you know, all the stuff about do you have electric, hot water? I mean, there's just not that much of,
Could we say,
and
you
EV
know,
charging, nobody's parked
don't
there.
approve this project until more information is available about this project?
To be quite frank, I don't know what more they can say based on the project, based on the nature of the project that would make it any, like they sort of have committed to the EV chargers. They were gonna look at rooftop PV. I don't think any of those changes would make, it's already kind of accounted for, I think, in the scorecard, at least just from what I had from the
Just too
meeting.
much stuff that's just not that relevant.
Yeah.
Fully electrify it, maybe that's an area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the conditioning of that space is not nearly as stringent as an office or home.
Right, exactly.
At 60 degrees or whatever, as long as it doesn't freeze, it's fine. But, so there's lots of little things we can chip away at.
Right.
Yeah.
As they progress the design.
Yeah.
So I will move adoption of, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
There was one other thing I was caught up on and I flagged, which was that we were recommending them use DC fast charging, like level 3. And I was kind of caught up because like level 1 and level 2, when we recommend it, kind of enhances the building's purpose. A level 3 is changing and we say it can create new revenue for them. I don't really know if that's our scope to say here, why don't you add another revenue enhancer there on an entirely different model.
You could just say installing, how do you feel about saying it's installing EV infrastructure that the neighborhood could use? There's just, you know, it's not residential, it's not office. People are not gonna be parking there, you know, over and over or for long stretches of time. So.
Yeah.
But that's an example of where we give a lot of points for EV and it really does make sense for this building to invest a lot in EV. So that's how we were trying to split the baby, is come up with a way to, we could take that out. You know, it's hard to know what we can do. We don't have perfect information about, so we could take that out.
Yep.
I'd be kind of inclined to take out some of those comments.
Sure.
About the use of the property, but I'd like to know what other people think.
I'm with the EV, just not the fast charging seems like kind of overstepping.
Okay, so we can take out that.
Revenue path part of that.
Sure.
We connect them with C-PACE to see if they can do a review of the building and show them what they could use in that project, that program.
Could be. Don't know. I mean, I'd like to think they're consultants. Hopefully they're consultants, then architects already know about CPACE.
C-PACE will finance anything that's sustainable, energy efficient as part of the project. So if photovoltaics or other considerations for the envelope, electrification, things like that, could be pushed into a different pile on their financing side, which would promote the C-PACE program in the county, giving another example. Give them a different way to look at their pro forma and what the payback on those things are, that might enhance their ability to put some charging there. I just, again, another what if.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to move that we vote that are subject to the changes that we've discussed tonight.
Cindy, I do need to make an admin note. There's obviously Joan's comments on this. Joan has since obviously rolled off.
Right.
So I think, for this time, let's just delete the comment, but any influence from external, not commissioners writing on your letters, which you are then submitting to the board. Obviously this isn't, she was already working on this. I think, Henry, you were supposed to present last meeting in September, but the time ran out. And then also I think that Joan actually created the Google Drive for this group
Right. I have to get that
years ago. So I
Right.
think that we just need to,
We need to change the
Move-
owner of.
move
that.
the owner, yes,
That's
exactly.
on my list.
So I think
forgot
just,
about it.
just an FYI, you know, like, let's delete the comment, but, just making sure that we're aware of that for
Yeah.
the future and any sort of comments that come from external
External
constituents or, yeah.
Right. So let's vote on, so there's a motion on the floor. There's a second. All in favor of approving the letter, subject to change, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, so any questions about Jenna's September summary? I put in changes, but
Non-members.
yeah.
So moving.
Any questions or comments? If you didn't look at it before, now's not the time, so. Okay, all in favor of approving the summary with the changes?
Aye.
Great, any opposed? Okay, so I wasn't panicking for the time because we've done most of the updates. The green building incentive policy was the biggest update that I wanted to spend. You know, we had like half an hour for updates. And that was what we talked about. On SPRCs, I'm skipping again. So there is a new SPRC that's gone from the preliminary list to the active list. And Katie has agreed to take that on with Kevin as a backup, giving Kevin a great interest in Katie's continuing good health. So.
Lots of-
Yeah.
I think I'm in good health.
Good health and travel schedule. Adaptive reuse projects, there are 2 others out there. I haven't assigned them because again, we could just keep sending out this letter saying, here's we've looked at what's on the website. There isn't the stuff we need. We can do that again. So there are 2 of those active. I'm open to what do people think? Should we try to weigh in on them? Should we wait, see if we get any reaction to our previous letter? I'll email around and see if there are any volunteers. Long range planning, Elizabeth mentioned Rob is our long range planning person.
Wednesday's
Right, also the residential study meeting. So Wednesday's a weekday. There's also the National Capital Regional Transportation Plan floating around looking for comments. And the county is going to, thanks to Jenna, I understand the county is going to raise the visibility of that, try to get individuals to comment. Energy Committee, we know that David was your presenter, talking about home electrification. So is there anything else you would like to say about the Energy Committee?
In the interest of time, we'll.
Okay, and Lily, in the interest of time, you sent around a written update. So is there anything else you'd like to say?
No. The only thing is I did ask you a question about how do you wanna provide feedback. If easier to just go the route of creating a Google document where you just can put in what you think we should be commenting on the policies that have been proposed. We can go that route, or you can just send me the feedback individually. But I preferred people telling me their preference so that I know how to corral the feedback. That's
So,
it.
Any thoughts? I think we're open. I think, I don't know. If we send you an if we do a Google Doc, that seems like more work. I see Jenna nodding, but then people can see what other people have commented. But I think people are probably just happiest just writing you back, Lily. I see Jenna nodding again. Is that?
I'm just trying to think of the rule around like all working on one document together. I don't think you can do that. For whatever reason.
Don't we do that? Don't we do that?
So I think that C2E2, I think because when you're working on letters, it's supposed to be that one person who's working on it. I think that there's like 2 people that you can talk in person, but once it's larger than the 2 people talking in a group, then that's considered a meeting or something rather than.
I thought it was non-synchronous.
Right.
With EC. So EC, you like can have an EC member and a C2E2 member because they're not the same. But if you are 2 C2E2 members or 3 C2E2 members, then there's the difference there.
I think we've been working on documents as a group, but Kevin?
I was just gonna say, unless we've got like a formal county attorney opinion saying we're not doing it. Google Docs inherently about as transparent way of doing things.
I think that.
Because you actually can see exactly what everybody said. It's memorialized.
The argument is this is not a conversation. This is like a notice board and one person's put something on a notice board. An hour later, somebody else put something on a notice board. That's not a meeting. It's not a conversation.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to keep doing this because there's really no other way for us to work. You gonna say
I'll get back to you on the actual verbiage.
something? Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right, anything?
So Google Doc, yeah?
So.
Yeah.
Like I shared.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you to our presenters, let's clap for David and Natalie.